Namaskar everyone and welcome to this third day of our Navaratri satsang. So since we are on time right now, it is 8 o'clock. So let us begin with the prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Navaratri satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us say the Shloka. मानातीतप्रतितविभवां मङ्गलं मङ्गलानां वक्षः पीठीं मधुविजयिनो भूषयन्तीं स्वकान्त्या प्रत्यक्षानुश्रविकमहिमः प्रार्थिनीनां प्रजानां श्रेयो मूर्तिं श्रियमशरणः त्वां शरण्यां प्रपद्ये यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharya, let us begin with our satsang topic for today. So as we know, we have been discussing about Navavidha Bhakti. So in Navavidha Bhakti, the 9 forms of Bhakti as explained by Prahlada in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the first day we talked about Shravanam, which is about hearing about the Lord, Kirtanam, chanting his name, and today we will go on to Smaranam. This word Vishnu, it can be attached to everything. Whatever we are doing it for the Lord. So Smaranam is remembering the Lord, constantly thinking about him. So who exemplified this for us? So we all know the story of Prahlada. Just to make us understand some finer aspects of that story, I will go over it again very much in brief. We know how when this baby was in the womb of Kayadu. Kayadu was the wife of Hiranyakashipu, who was that demon, who was the brother of Hiranyaksha. And Hiranyaksha had been killed by the Lord in the Varaha Avatara. And because of that, Hiranyakashipu was very angry against Vishnu. He was angry with Vishnu. And he had made a condition that, nobody in his kingdom should ever utter the name of Hari. No yajnas should go on. Nobody should pray to God. Everybody should chant his name only, Hiranyakashipu's name only. That was the rule he had kept there. And knowing that Hiranyakashipu's wife is pregnant and is going to have a child, Indra had come there with the intention of killing that child. At that time, it is Narad Rishi who stops him and says, don't make this mistake. That child who is growing in the womb of Kayadu is going to become one of the biggest bhaktas who will be remembered forever. And Narad Rishi saves that Kayadu and takes her to his ashram. And there he spends all his time in explaining to her, talking to her, narrating stories, narrating the glories of the Lord. And Kayadu sometimes used to fall asleep, but then the baby growing inside, who later got the name as Prahlada, that baby was listening and assimilating everything. And that Prahlada became one of the greatest bhaktas. So this Hiranyakashipu sends him to the Gurukul to study, but this boy doesn't study anything. The very first day he comes back. And then the father is surprised, that maybe like other children, he doesn't like to go to the school. So he asks him, what is this? Why did you go yesterday and come, and then now you are no longer going again to the Gurukula? So this boy says, no, whatever they are teaching there is totally against whatever I know. They are telling me that the Devas, Vishnu, all of them, they are our enemies. But isn't the same Vishnu there in them also and in us also? How can we have this sense of enmity with somebody? Isn't the same Lord living in all of us? See the level of that child's, bhakti, that he has reached that stage where he is able to see the Lord within every person, isn't it? So he says, for this reason, I'm not going back. Then, of course, we know all the events that unfold. Now, Hiranyakashipu tries again and again, but those gurus, those acharyas are not able to do anything. And Prahlada, in fact, then he starts even, according to the Rakshasas, he starts poisoning the minds of the other children, because Prahlada starts telling all of them about the glories of chanting the Lord's name and how they should be spending their time in thinking about God and, being good to everyone and all that. So finally, in that last stage, now Hiranyakashipu is desperate. He wants to kill this Prahlada. Although he is his own son, he wants to kill him. So he tries different things. And we know about all those methods which Hiranyakashipu used, isn't it? Now, when they try to throw Prahlada off from the top of the mountain, then this child, he begins to roll down, no, as he's falling. And he's holding his heart very strongly. He's, hugging himself and holding his heart. Now the acharyas ask here that why is he holding his heart? Is he afraid? No. The spirit of Prahlada is the Lord is within me. Now when I am falling off from this mountain top, my body is going to roll, and he's not bothered about what is going to happen to him, but he is worried that the Lord who is within should not get disturbed. He should not be dislodged from his position. See the level of bhakti of that child. And because of this bhakti of the child, the Lord himself comes and holds that Prahlada. Nothing happens to him. He is saved. Then Prahlada is put into the fire. But then he thinks, oh, this is the Agni through which my Lord is getting all the food. So that Agni fails to burn Prahlada. Then they set all the snakes on him, the poisonous snakes, and he's made to go into that room where all the poisonous snakes are there. Looking at those snakes, Prahlada remembers that these are the forms of Anantashesha on whom my Lord is lying. And then nothing happens to him. The snakes don't bite him. The mad elephant is set to trample on Prahlada. And what does Prahlada remember at that time? He says, just like the Lord came to protect that elephant called Gajendra, he is there. He will take care of everything. And the elephant does nothing to him. Finally, they give him poison. And this Prahlada sips that poisoned, paisa or whatever. And in his mind, he's thinking, okay, this is the Amrit of the Lord. And really, that poison turns into Amrita for him. So through all these examples, right, what we can see is how constantly Prahlada's mind was focused on the Lord. Whatever came in his path, the difficulties, we can't say that he had any pleasant things in his life, but all the difficulties that came to him at every stage, he used whatever was in that situation to remind him of the Lord. And that is why Prahlada is said to be the best example for Smaranam, right? So that is what we are going to talk about today, constantly remembering the Lord. Now, of course, we know how after all this torture of Prahlada, finally Hiranyakashipu says, where is your Hari? Where is your Narayana? Tell me, is he in this pillar? And at that moment, as Hiranyakashipu kicks or hits that pillar with his mace, the Lord comes in a very amazing kind of form which had not been ever seen before, half lion and half man, fulfilling all the conditions of the boon of the vara that Brahma had given to Hiranyakashipu. He kills Hiranyakashipu. So we know this story of Narasimha Avatara. Focus for us for today is this attitude of Prahlada. Many times in our life, we are having difficulties. We have problematic situations. How do we look at those situations? Prahlada had his own father torturing him. The kind of torture he had to undergo, nobody ever expects the father to do that, isn't it? And yet, he went through it quietly. Not once did Prahlada say, I am such a great bhakta of the Lord. Why am I having to face all these troubles? Isn't it? But we who hardly know the starting alphabet of bhakti, we think that I am doing so much for God. Why am I being troubled? I am doing so much prayer and prarthana, and I am a bhakta, we call ourselves. And we say, why is the Lord troubling us? And we say, why do bad things happen to good people? And we go on cribbing. But we must learn from the attitude of Prahlada not to harbor hatred against those who are bad to us. But how we can do that? If we learn to see that in every person there is the Lord's form. If we are able to take that spirit, then we will be able to have the bhakti like Prahlada. So this kind of constant remembrance of the Lord, this Smaranam is important for us. Now, why should we practice Smaranam, right? So just like whenever we buy a new gadget, there is a manual which comes with that gadget, isn't it? Which tells us the procedure to use that gadget. Similarly, whatever Shastras have come down, whatever is there in the Itihasas and Puranas, whatever events are there in the pastimes of the Lord, all those are the manual for us about how we should lead our life. And by learning about these pastimes and by constantly thinking about them, we can learn what to do and what not to do in our life. We will get a direction for what is the right path to take and what is not to be done, what is to be avoided. The second thing is our mind. We say, no, it is like a monkey. And just as the monkey jumps from one branch to another, our mind also is constantly restless. And most of the time, it is involved in thinking of either the past or the future. So, about the past, we have a lot of regrets. I should have done like that. This should not have happened to me. They should not have behaved like that. About the future, we worry. We are anxious that what is going to happen? What if? What if? And all this kind of thinking of either the past or of the future, it only drains away our mental energy. Now, if we spend time in thinking about the Leelas of the Lord, this kind of draining of our energy will stop. Because whenever my mind is empty, if I'm going to utilize my mind, if I'm going to engage my mind in thinking about the Lord and His Leelas, then I will not go into the other kind of thinking which drains my mental energy. The other thing is that our mind always pulls us into seeking pleasure. We want to enjoy, and whatever it may be, that kind of enjoyment ultimately it leads to dukkha. If I eat one sweet, I am happy. I like the sweet. I ate one Mysore pak, I am happy. I ate two pieces, I am okay, happier. I will eat three. But then beyond a point, what will happen if I just go on eating that sweet? I will end up vomiting at some stage. And then that same thing, that means the same thing which gave me joy at one point of time is ultimately going to cause me sorrow also. But the mind always pulls us in this direction. But if we engage our mind into what is the real joy from remembering about the Lord and hearing His stories or hearing how He helped the bhaktas, hearing what great qualities He has, if we hear about all this and we keep remembering this again and again, and we keep singing about it also, then that kind of joy what we get, that bliss which we are getting, that ananda will never end. That will not lead to any dukkha. That will only be pure ananda. So that is the reason why we must practice Smaranam also. Also, we know that whatever it is that we think about the most, whatever we are focusing our attention on, that is what we try to become. And if we are going to think about what you say, objects in this world or people in this world, then we are going to become like them or like those things. And we will always be caught up in this, I want that, and so on. But if we constantly think about God, then that sattvic quality will rub off on us and we will slowly get transformed. Other than this, Krishna himself has told in the Bhagavad Gita, Mayyeva mana adhatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivasishyasi mayyeva, ata urdhvam na samshayaha. Whoever, he's telling Arjuna, that fix your mind on me, only on me, and surrender your buddhi, your intellect to me. Once you do this, always you will live in me, and there is no doubt about this. So if we want to live a life which is filled with God's grace, then we must keep thinking about the Lord, fix our mind on Him. So that is the importance of Shravanam. Moreover, whatever it is said that at the end of this Janma, at the moment when a person is about to die, whatever they think or they remember at that point of time, that will be their next Janma. That will be their status in the next Janma. We know the famous example of Jada Bharata. There was a Raja called Bharata, and he was a great bhakta of the Lord. And he was such a highly elevated spiritual soul that he decided that he will give up his kingdom and go to the forest and single-mindedly do tapa. So he went like that. When he was doing his meditation in the forest, one fine day he noticed that there was a baby deer which was struggling in the water. The mother deer, the mother who was pregnant, that deer had, hearing the sound of a lion, it jumped across the river. And in that anxiety and tension, that baby got delivered at that moment. It fell into the water and there was nobody to take care of it. So this Bharata walked into that water, he picked up that baby deer and he kept taking care of it. Now, gradually, as his attachment for that deer grew, his focus on his dhyana became less. And at the time when it was time for him to depart, he was wondering that what will happen to my deer? Who will take care of the deer? Why that deer has not yet come home? With that thought, he died. And later, in the next janma he took, he became a deer himself. Of course, there is a further continuation of that story because he had so much, spiritual level was very high. So he remembered that what had happened in the past life. So in this life, he never wanted to associate with anybody and he would only roam around the ashramas and all that. And at the end of that dear life, he again became a human being. Now, when he became a human being again, he remembered that I was that Raja, I was doing tapas, that deer I got attached to, and because of that I lost track of my sadhana. Now I must not do all this. And he acts as if he is a dumb person who doesn't know anything, and he's constantly thinking only about the Lord. So why this story is relevant here is that whatever it is told, even in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has told that whatever you think of at the time of your death, that is what you will be in your next janma. So at the time of death, if I want to be thinking about something good, what is that something good? I should be thinking about the Lord. Because if I think about the Lord, then He will take me to moksha, isn't it? So that is the ideal situation. But we don't know what kind of situation will be there when it is time for us to go, isn't it? Whether we will be ill and bedridden, and at that time our body will, kind of give up on us. They tell, no, kapha, vata, pitta, everything will start coming up. We will be choked, and that is how the end happens for most people. Or somebody may die unexpectedly when they never expected it to happen. So whatever it may be, is there a guarantee that at that moment I will remember the Lord? If I want that to be the situation, then I must practice from now on only. Only whatever we have made a practice and a habit from now will be there with us at that time when we have no control over our own body. If at that time my mind has to think about God, then from now only I should have practiced. So that is also another reason why we must keep thinking about the Lord at all times. The next thing is that this concept that at the time of death we must think of the Lord, that is one side. But there is another aspect of this also. We know of the Varaha Avatara, where Lord came in the form of Varaha and protected Bhumi Devi, who had been, submerged in the ocean by Hiranyaksha. So at that time, what happened was that Hiranyaksha had been destroyed, and Lord Varaha had lifted up Bhumi Devi and he placed her on his lap. That is what is the form that we worship as Bhu Varaha Swami, right? So at that time, when Prithvi Devi asks that, I know my children means she's referring to all of us, human beings. I know my children are not the kind who, do everything properly. They may go on the wrong track and all that. So what is the solution to that? How will you protect them? Tell me something that I can teach to my children so that they will, attain you finally. So at that time, Varaha Avatara, Lord speaks one set of verses, which is called as the Varaha Charama Shloka. That says, Sthite manasi suswaste sharire satiyo naraha dhatu samye sthite smarta vishwarupam cha mamajam tatastam mriyamanam cha mriyamanam tu kashtapashana sannibham Aham smarami mad bhaktam nayami paramangatim. Aham smarami mad bhaktam. That is the key here. He says, when my bhakta has Mahavishwasa on me and he surrenders to me, at what time? At the time when he is having Sthite manasi suswaste sharire. At that time, when his sharira is in healthy condition, when his body is calm and quiet, that means at any point of time when he is young and in that young age, if he realizes that I am the ultimate, and if he has Mahavishwasa on me and he surrenders completely to me, at that time, then at the time of his death, I am not bothered whether he remembers me or not. At that time, in his last moment, I will think of the bhakta. So, how great is the Lord's karuna on us? He's promising this, that if you have Mahavishwasa on me, if you have surrendered to me at a time when you are in good health, mentally and physically, and you spend some time in contemplating on me in doing smarana, then at that time, whenever it is that your last moment comes, I will not bother about whether you have thought of me at that last moment, because at that time you will be unconscious like a log of wood or a stone. So if you can't think of me at that time also, because you have done it at some point of time when you were in good state, I will consider that itself. And I will come to you at your last moment and I will take you to my Parandhama. So that is the kind of assurance that Lord Varaha has given to us. So considering this also, now when we are in good health, when we are having a proper state of mind, when we have understood the importance of smarana, what is it that stops us from thinking about the Lord, from giving our mind to think about Him? So we must remember that the Lord is so merciful and we must continue to practice smarana. So who has shown us how to practice this? The first example is that of Dhruva. We know how Dhruva was a small child. He was the son of Uttanapada Raja, and Uttanapada Raja had two wives. One was Suruchi, one was Suniti. Dhruva was the son of Suniti, and Suruchi had another son. So when the two children were playing and Dhruva wanted to sit on his father's lap, then that boy, Uttama, comes there and pushes away Dhruva. And this Suruchi shouts at Dhruva and says, you should have been born in my womb. Only then you will have the right to go and sit on your father's lap. So this Dhruva is very hurt and he runs to his mother, Suniti. And his mother comforts him and says, what she's telling is correct. You have you don't have the fortune to be able to sit on the king's lap. And if you want to be born again through the womb of Suruchi, then you must, that is only possible if you get the Lord's grace. So only God is there who will be able to give you whatever you are wanting. And if you get the Lord's grace, He will make you such a great person that you don't need to sit on anybody's lap. So with this kind of advice from his mother, Dhruva goes away into the forest and he spends 6 months in continuous, very rigorous tapas. And in that austerity, he's so lost. The Bhagavatam describes how he goes about it. First few weeks, first few days, first few weeks, he's only eating thrice a day, twice a day, and he's eating only that leaf and all. Then he stops even that, he's only eating what is fallen on the ground. Then he stops even that, he's only drinking water. Then he even stops drinking water and he's only breathing air, and on that he's surviving. And at that time, the heat in the universe becomes so large that everything starts to burn. And when he finally controls his breath and stops even breathing, then it is as if Vayu has been pulled away from the entire earth and people start suffocating. So all the gods, they rush to Narayana and they say, what is this? What is happening? And Narayana realizes that this child is yearning for, my darshan, and he goes there. Now this Dhruva is so lost in that dhyana that he does not even realize the Lord has come. Such was the Smarana Shakti of this Dhruva, how concentratedly he focused his mind. The other example, although Dhruva was such a small child, in just 6 months he managed to get darshan of the Lord, which is difficult, so difficult for yogis who have been doing tapas for thousands of years. So we must take inspiration from Dhruva and put our energy into Smaranam. The other example is that of a barber called Sena Nhavi. Now this barber, He was the barber to a king. He lived in Madhya Pradesh, some area. This is a real story. So he lived in Madhya Pradesh area. He was barber to the king there. And this king was very short tempered and he would get angry very quickly. So one day, this barber didn't go on time. So the king's soldiers came there to his house saying, "Come fast." Now, actually, this barber, this Navi, he was the Sena. He was, lost in devotion to Vitthal. He was doing Smaran. He was doing Dhyan. And his wife didn't want to go and disturb him because even if she calls out at that time, he is not going to wake up. He is lost in his dhyana. So she tells those soldiers that he is not here and they go away. Okay. Now there was a neighbor who was also a barber and he was very jealous of this Sena. So he goes to the king and he says, "No, no, she is telling lies. He is very much at home. Send your soldiers again and see they will find that." So the soldiers go again. When the soldiers go again, what happens is that uh, this Sena comes out and he says, "What is this? Why have you come?" So they tell, "No, no, king is calling you." So he says, "Come, we will go." And Sena goes along with them. When they go there, he has to do what tail malish, that oil massage for the king and all that. So, and he has to shave the king and he has to cut his hair and all that. When he is doing all this, no, that king is feeling some kind of joy from within, which never before he had felt. Then there is a cup of oil in which he can see the reflection. And when he looks in that reflection, it appears as if the Sena is having four hands. Then he looks up again at Sena, but Sena is having only two hands. He looks at the reflection, there are four hands. So he's wondering what is happening. And he says, "You please wait here. I will go have my bath, finish my bath, and come back." So Sena says, "No, I have some other work. I will come back later." Anyway, this king gives some gold coins to him and sends him away. Now, after some time, what happens is he finishes his bath, the king, and he comes back. And then he's like, agitated. "Where is Sena? Why didn't he come? I want to see him. I want to see him." And everybody is very shocked that what is this king behaving like this? He says, "No, no, I will die if I don't see Sena." That is the kind of, desperation with which he wants to see. Now, this Sena, what he does is, after some time, he comes back. Then, as soon as he comes there, this king goes and hugs him, and he's, like saying, "Where did you go away? Why did you go away?" So the Sena is also shocked that why is the king behaving like this? So then the king says, "Come, come, I want to see again that four-armed form which you had shown me." So Sena says, "What four-armed? I have only two hands. What four hands you are talking about?" So then he says, "No, no," he tells his soldiers, "Bring that cup of oil." And then he holds it below the Sena's face and he says, "You peep inside." So when he peeps inside, nothing. The king can only see the Sena with two hands and his normal face. So then he's shocked. And then it strikes this Sena that, oh God, what has actually happened is that four-handed form is of who? It is of Krishna, isn't it? So Sena, actually the real Sena has come now. He doesn't know anything what happened before. So who was it who came instead of Sena to protect him? It was Lord Krishna himself. It was Vithala himself who came. And because it was Vithala who came in the form of that Sena, that is why the king had felt so much joy on seeing him. So this story tells us that how the Lord, if somebody is involved constantly in thinking about the Lord, then the Lord will rush to their rescue. So that is what we must try to get inspiration from. So with these two examples, we can understand how we must practice Smaranam. So now we will go over to some action points. So if you want to do dhyana or smarana of the Lord, right? Find a quiet place, find an undisturbed time, have an asana which is clean, and sit down. Once you sit down, control your breath, focus your attention and do some deep breathing because it will slow down our body. And when the body slows down, the mind also will slow down. Then choose any form of the God which you like, any deity whom you like, that form of the Lord you keep in front of your eyes. If you can close your eyes and visualize the form of the deity, fine. If you can't do that, open your eyes and look at the form of the deity. And when you look at it, think about all the aspects of that form of the Lord. Think about how his entire body is like a lotus. Think about how his eyes are so filled with karuna for all the bhaktas. right? Like that, contemplate on the form of the Lord. In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a shloka which tells that we must concentrate our mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, because on the feet of the Lord, there are many different marks. Now, out of all these marks, they say that the four marks are most important. One is the Vajra, the thunderbolt. Then next is the Ankusha, or that goad, noose-like thing which is used to control the elephants. That is the Ankusha. Then there is Dhwaja, a flag or a banner, and there is Saroruha, that is the lotus. So why these four particular things are mentioned? When we think of the Vajra, when we visualize the Vajra on the lotus feet of the Lord, that Vajra is so powerful, it will destroy anything. Now, I also have a big mountain of papas. So that will be destroyed by the Vajra which is there on the Lord's feet. That papa is preventing me from going further on my spiritual path. So that Vajra will destroy this mountain of my papa. The Ankusha which is there on the feet of the Lord will keep my mind in control. And that mind which is controlled will then be able to think and chant and do Smaran in a better way. The Dhwaja which is there is showing me that I need to have no fear at all. I must be courageous because the Lord is there with me to take care of me. And the Saroruha, that lotus, is a symbol of Mata Lakshmi. And wherever Mata Lakshmi is there, then definitely Narayana is there. It is a symbol of nectar, and that is what will, nourish me and take me ahead. So, like this, when we visualize the lotus feet of the Lord with these four, the Vajra, the Ankusha, the Dhwaja, and the Saroruha, that will help to visualize the Lord's form. So, yeah. Then there are few more points that when we start Smaranam, we can gradually begin. Sit for a few minutes. Gradually, you can try and increase the time. Generally, what will happen is when we are sitting and thinking, we find that at that time only all the unwanted thoughts start floating around. So let it be. Watch those thoughts. Try to move them away and bring your mind back to the thought of the Lord. So beginning Smaranam for a few minutes, and then you can gradually increase the time as you feel comfortable. Whatever incidents happen in our life, connect them to the Leelas of the Lord. If somebody, like for example, no, I have put one picture here. Somebody tells you that, oh, my kid is so naughty and this thing. Then you, in your mind, you start thinking about all the naughty pastimes of Krishna. So like that, when you try to keep your mind connected to the Leelas of the Lord, it will be easier to do Smarana. If you carry a water bottle with you to work or wherever you go, put one chanting your Nama Japa on that. And whenever you look at that water bottle, you will be reminded of the Lord, and you will be reminded to chant also. If you are having a mobile, we have the screen lock on the mobile, or we have a screen saver on the laptop or the computer, put some picture of the Lord. And whenever you look at it, you will be reminded of the Lord. Stay connected with other sadhakas, because whether we are able to do alone on our own or not, when we are connected with other people in satsanga, then it becomes easier for us to practice, right? So whatever you hear in a satsang, whatever you may have heard through your Shravana process, connect and share that with other people when you are talking to them. We talk of so many things in this world which are not going to be of any use to us. Instead, let us try to share some points which will be of value from our sadhana point of view. So that means automatically now most people in this world who are not into sadhana, they will not like to talk about such things. So gradually what will happen is when you start talking such things, you may find that those people cut off from you. So actually that is good, isn't it? Because it's a kind of filtering which is happening. So now you are going to only get sadhakas. You're only going to get other people who are in sadhana to connect with you. And by that process, you are naturally going to get more, become more and more sattvic. So these are some of the points that we can try and inculcate so that our smarana becomes better. So just to summarize what we talked about today, we talked about the story of Prahlada and how he is the greatest example of smarana. Whatever difficulties came, he constantly remembered the Lord. He saw everything as belonging to the Lord. Then we saw how, and I mean why we must practice smarana, because to engage our mind in the Lord's pastimes is the best and most blissful activity. Then we talked about at the time of death, to remember God, we have to keep thinking of Him at that time. And to keep thinking at that time, we must have practiced from now only. But then we also saw how Lord Varaha says that if now you think about me, then at that time I will come to your rescue and I will take you with me. So that is the importance of beginning Smaranam from now itself. Then we said that like Dhruva and like the barber Sena Nhavi, we must practice Smaranam. And then we talked about a few points which are for practically for us to adopt so that we are able to do Smarana in a
Can you
nice.
read this shloka?
Yeah?
Can you read this shloka?
Yeah. Sanchintayed Bhagavatascharanarvindam Vajrankushatvacha Saroruha Lanchanadhyam Uttungarakta Vilasan Nakachakravala Jyotsnabhirahata Mahadhrihadayandhakaram. You can find it. This reference is third canto, 28th chapter, 21st shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is there. So that talks about how we should do our meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord. So practical points, what all we can do, how we can keep our mind constantly engaged in the Lord's thoughts. So let us offer Kritagnyata. After that, we have about a minute left. Let us offer Kritagnyata, gratitude at the lotus feet of Mata Mahalakshmi, Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring us to start and join this satsang. And let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Namaskar. We have about 1 minute. Anybody has anything to say or any question to ask, you may ask. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Shobha has asked whether we can add Shabari's example also for today's topic. Yes, definitely we can add Shabari's example also. Shabari is also going to come into our topic somewhere else. I think she comes under Archanam, where it is offering worship to the Lord. But of course, the way she waited and did all that she could for serving the Lord, constantly remembering him, she waited. So she is also a very good example for Smaranam. That's true. Thank you, Purnimaka. Thank you for your satsanga joining us today. Everybody, Zarnaji, everyone, thank you so much. So the meeting is going to end
When
now.
we think of the lotus feet of the Lord,
Yeah.
do we just you showed one picture about the things in the lotus feet, Shanku, Chakra,
Yeah. Just think of all
Gaja,
those.
and all.
Yeah.
Do we need to remember those things also?
Which things also?
In the lotus feet,
Huh.
you have given some.
Yeah. If we remember that, it will help us to understand how this is going to help me. We can focus on that. If you're